You talked about the growth of China and India and the growth of consumerism in particular in China. You talked about the example of cars. Is China looking at sustainability in the same way that we are here in the U.S. and are other countries looking at it?
They're trying to. They're trying to do whole cities that are sustainable, where all of the waste becomes supply and so on, like the Danish have done in some of their places. But but as I understand it, it hasn't been as successful as they thought it was. Bill McDonough is trying to do some work there, and it hasn't really worked out. And China's a really big place. I mean, and they have got really big problems. Their government has three priorities. One of them is how to get their economy to be circular, they call it. How to not be dependent on the United States, how to keep it inside. The other one is the environment. How to deal with the extraordinary environmental problems. I mean, you can't believe the environmental problems they have. The other one is social stability, like I talked about earlier. And so they've got a lot of concerns in the environmental and other about how to deal with that. And so they're looking for alternative energy things, and they probably are doing all kinds of spooky things that we don't know, that to try to corner certain markets on rare materials that'll use for magnetic motors that are self-generating and all. Who knows what all they're trying to do. But there is a sensitivity, and they're particularly so because all of these power plants they're building are coal-fired power plants, and they have really dirty coal that comes from the eastern part or the western part of China. Yes, sir, in the back.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your thought-provoking presentation.
Thank you.
One of the things that really jumped out at me during your presentation is there are two types of research that are going on that would have an immediate salient impact on our social, political, economic, and ecological systems. And those two types of research are biomedical research and research on alternative sources of energy. It seems like on the one hand, you have the research on alternative sources of energy, which address these issues, peak energy exploration and whatnot, and also which is sort of promulgated by population growth. On the other hand, you have biomedical research, which extends human lifespans. And it seems like if you advance this type of research, which is biomedical, right?
Yeah, I know.
You would have to over-innovate or over-innovate on this side. Is there any public policies that you recommend or research priorities you recommend on this?
Trying to control science is kind of hard, or even give direction to it, except that the government, of course, we can influence that by the way what they fund, because basic scientific research is mostly funded by the government. And so if the White House decided that there were certain kind of policies or priorities that were important to them, and they changed the funding, for instance, in terms of alternative energy, if you really decided that zero-point energy now, or cold fusion or something, if you were up against the wall and you said, if we don't find an alternative, we are really in trouble, and you suddenly threw open the doors and threw a lot of money at that, you'd get so many people working that problem. And that is the only way I know how to do this, because the economy, the scale of the kind of money that government puts into this thing and influences is unparalleled from anywhere else. And so they play such an important role in this. And I'll just get political and say we haven't done very well for the last 8 years, and hopefully things will change a little bit. But that's what it'd have to be. That it'd have to be, I'll tell you, what it has to be is an integrated strategy. It needs to be a grand strategy for this country that says, who do we want to be and where do we want to be 15 years from now? What role do we want to play in the world, and what kind of a world do we want? And then you back yourself away from that, and you start to say, in order to get to that kind of world, what have we got to do in terms of energy, in terms of this, in terms of this, in terms of this? And then you have, with some extraordinary amount of fearlessness and stand up and say, this is where we're going. And leadership that we have never had for a long, long time, because we're literally at a point in that transition where you need somebody, and perhaps this president has the ability to do that, can stand up and say, you know, if we don't become somebody new, we got ourselves a whole bunch of problems. And here is where, you know, and has some people around him that can think about that and can help shape and build that kind of an image. But that's what it's got to be. Yes, sir.
I didn't think I'd be asking this question. My name's Todd Clark from DC. The question is this. You're obviously talking to a receptive audience, eager audience. It's pointed in your slides to those who might whine and those who, among all of us, will be fearful. The question is this. For those that are going to try to maintain order and use the technological advances that are coming through police state thinking and military operations within the United States, blah, 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 blah. Coming from a military background, is there a possibility that you see the military police apparatus working organically, cooperatively, happily, joyfully?
It's a wonderful, wonderful question, and I hope so. I just really hope so. But having worked in the government, it's hard for me to see how they get from here to there, you know? Absent, I'll tell you how change happens. Somebody punches you in the nose. And then you say, I don't want that to happen again. And it seems particularly for large and trusted bureaucratic organizations, until they are threatened, until they're bloodied, until they're scared, they don't change. They have this huge kind of inertia. And in one sense, maybe that's one of the bright sides associated with all of this, is that, in fact, maybe this will cause the kind of change that will enable these institutions to see themselves in a different way, and rather than kind of maintain the status quo. But I don't think, I'm not going to go into it. I've been thinking a lot about, you know, how you change large, big government organizations, and let me tell you, that'd be a hard job. That'd be a hard job.
Well, John, I think we're off here, but thank you
I'm
very much
sorry.
for coming.